Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lord. Goodness gracious. I was really worried that was not going to be a smallmouth. Yeah. Oh, that's a big one. Whew, that's fun, I tell you what. Hey guys, I want to give you 4 techniques that are going to catch fish under conditions that you might encounter when there's either been a lot of fishing pressure or you're post-frontal or the fish are just not cooperating. You know, it's really fun when you can go out and throw a frog on top or throw a crankbait or your power baits, but a lot of times you've got to back it up after they've had some pressure or they're not biting great with a finesse technique. And one of my favorites, I've got a little Big Bite Baits Finesse Worm. This is a little 6-inch Finesse Worm on a Neko Rig. And what I've done is I've put a nail weight in the head of it right here. So the fat end has a nail weight, and then there's a little O-ring, and then I'm hooking it. I like to hook it hook point up, and then that falls, you know, real slow fall. And that's just a great way for catching fish. You know, whether you be fishing grass or around docks or even rock cover and even open water cover. It's a great way to catch spots out in the open water. That's kind of how I think it was designed originally, was to catch open water spotted bass. You know, another finesse technique that we hear an awful lot about these days is the Ned Rig, and it's a little different. I've got the jig head on the bait itself, and it's a great tool for fishing vertical stuff like walls and bridges and dock pilings, and it's also really good for suspended fish, spotted bass, you know, suspended, you know, out over schools of bait or something. You can catch them that way really well with a Ned Rig. And one other thing, it's really good on rock piles or you know, shallow rock, sand, hard cover. Not a real great grass bait. You know, if we're gonna go grass, I'd probably go a different technique. But again, it's a really good, I've got it rigged just a little funky there. I like to not have any bend in my worm, but you can see it's just a nice little mushroom head on there. Good solid hook. It's not quite as light a hook as I'm using when I'm drop shotting or when I'm throwing my Neko Rig, and I'm using it on a little heavier. This is a medium heavy Phoenix action Phoenix rod, 7.6, and you can see it's a medium heavy, and when I'm throwing either a Jig Head Worm or a Ned Rig, I want just a little more power in the rod. You know, it's still got a soft enough tip for them to take it in, but I like just a little bit more power in the rod. So that's going to be the Ned Rig, and again, it's great for smallmouth, spotted bass, and even largemouth. There's lots of times where I catch largemouth on it as well. So that's my number 2 finesse rig, and then one that's been around for a long time, and it was really fun when a lot of guys didn't know about it when coming out east, is my drop shot rig. You know, and that's really common now. Basically, I've got a little 1/4 ounce weight here, and I vary the weight just depending on depth and current and stuff like that. But in general, I use it as a light line technique most of the time. And so I've got a weight that basically anchors the bait on the bottom, and then my hook is, you know, I've got about a 14-inch leader. And what that does is that suspends that worm up here where this hook is at. It suspends it in the strike zone. A lot of times right where those fish are hanging, it keeps it right there. And you can still impart action, you know, whether you're shaking it or it's just kind of floating. You can impart action without taking it out of the strike zone. You know, with a crankbait, you've got to wind it in order to give it action, and it comes and it goes. Same with a spinnerbait, a chatterbait, even a jig, a lot of things like that. You've got to take it out of the strike zone in order to impart action. And one of the beautiful things about the drop shot, I mean, the beauty of a drop shot is that it stays in the strike zone and it just tantalizes them. So one, they either have to bite it because it's just been there so long and they can't take it, or it's just such a simple deal that you know, it keeps it there and they finally just bite it. It's a great technique for targeting specific spots, you know, like a dock pole or a rock, big boulder, rock piles. I use it a lot for target fishing. I don't use it a lot to cover a lot of water unless I'm maybe smallmouth fishing on the Great Lakes where I'm drifting a little bit and I'm dragging it. So that's a good smallmouth technique. But in general, I'm fishing specific targets with it. So if I've got a great rock pile that's full of big bass and I just need to get bit, drop shot's a great tool. And if I'm fishing an area where they've had a lot of fishing pressure and I want to put the bait, you know, every little dock pole, every little specific spot, I can pitch that drop shot in there and kill it there and just kind of dead stick it long enough that I can just talk those fish into biting a lot of times. So it's a really great technique for target fishing, pressured fish, and then also, you know, post frontal fish that aren't really willing to be that aggressive. So those are a couple of my favorite finesse techniques. And then the very last one, this is an old school jig head worm or a shaky head, whatever you like to call it. I've just got a Big Bite Baits finesse worm on there. That color is called Tilapia Magic, and that's a real good color just about anywhere in the country. If you've got some form of green pumpkin, purple, black flake, blue flake, that kind of stuff right there, that'll catch them, and it's just a great fish catcher. I use that one mainly when the weight is hitting the bottom. You know, whether I'm fishing gravel or rocks, you know, it's basically a shaky head where I'm shaking it on the bottom. Now, another time where it works really well is on a vertical fall. You know, where you're fishing down a wall, a bluff wall. It might be a dock wall, might be a sea wall, things like that. It's also a really great technique, and you can catch them. You can catch them suspended over suspended fish, shaking it as well, kind of a lot like my Ned Rig or my Neko Rig. But that's a shaky head, and that's a great technique to catch them year-round, pressured fish, post-frontal fish, and just getting lots of bites. And you can catch big ones. You know, I can tell you, I've caught no shortage of big ones on some of these finesse rigs. I think my biggest one on a drop shot is 9 or 10 pounds. I think I've caught a 9 or 10 pounder on a shaky head, jig head worm, and on the Ned Rig I've caught some 5 and 6 pound smallmouth. So you can really catch big fish on these finesse techniques, but you just need to know the types of conditions and the types of situations you want to be fishing them in.